Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Allie. It's day 26 of the September series where I upload a video every single day. It is currently 8:45 p.m. and I just wanted to explain what this video was because it started as something completely different and now it's like a million years long and I needed to cut it up. So this is a try a chapter video where I read the first chapter of 6 books. I go into great detail of what happens in the first chapter and my opinions on that. I'll put chapters down below. Chapters. Sorry, it's late. So that you can skip around to a book that interests you. Feel free to put me at 2x speed or just skip this video entirely because I am chatty in this one. I started this video out as a day in the life where I was taking you throughout my entire routine throughout the day. 5:30, I get up, blah, 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 blah. And then I word vomited for way too long, like 20 minutes on these chapters. So I had to cut all of that out and now it's just very choppy. This is my explanation and my apology. I'm sorry. Let me tell you the books I'm going to talk about. First, I talk about You Again. This is a contemporary romance. I believe it's enemies to friends to lovers over the spans of many years. Then I talk about Mortal Follies, which is a historical sapphic fantasy romance. Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. This is a historical, I think it might be horror leaning, but there's vampires in it. So is that fantasy? It's getting late and I don't know. But there's also a little bit of a romance in here. Then Fireborn, this is a fantasy, maybe a fantasy romance. I got this on the recommendation of if you liked Fourth Wing for the dragons and wish there were more dragons, to read this, and so I immediately purchased it. Then Fall of Ruin and Wrath by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is a fantasy romance as well. I think this one's spicier just based on what I know about the author. And finally, Powerless, another fantasy. I'm pretty sure it's a romance as well. I had fantasy romance on the mind, but also these are all newly purchased books that I wanted to talk about. And talk I did. Without further ado, here's me earlier today. All right, I listened to the first chapters of those 2 books. First, You Again. Oh my God, that was a long ass first chapter. It was like 35 pages long. I think this is a retelling of When Harry Met Sally, but I think maybe reversed. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've watched that movie. I kind of want to watch it tonight. The main female character in this book, she seems to be the cynic, doesn't believe in love or monogamy. She's bisexual. She lives in New York City with a woman who she seems to be kind of in love with. And that woman's date or boyfriend comes to the door and it's our main guy. He is very straight-laced. He's a chef, but he also really believes in soulmates and he's really trying to find his soulmate. So we get a scene with the 2 of them clearly disliking each other, but clearly being attracted to each other, where he's making dinner for our main character's roommate and they're battling it out about whether love is real or soulmates are real. I feel like we've seen that discussion a lot in movies and books, so it does feel a little kind of stale. But I am excited to see how this evolves because I started the second chapter and it was like 2 years later. So I am interested and it does expire tomorrow, but I started Mortal Follies, is that what it's called? And I was way more interested just from the tone of this book. So I think I'm just gonna continue with Mortal Follies today and I'll get to You Again eventually. Let me know if you've read it, if it's worth it. The cover, it might just be worth it enough to buy it. Mortal Follies, this is, like I said, a sapphic historical fantasy romance. It's in the 1800s. It seems to be like the Bridgerton era where there's courting and all these balls that people go to. The first chapter takes place at a ball where Miss Malis Mitchell-Moore has a dress that starts falling apart, but it's not just like regular falling apart. It seems to be the work of a fairy or some mystical, mythological creature, someone who's pulling a prank on her for whatever reason. And so she's panicking. She goes out to the balcony or something. She's practically naked now in her underwear. And in walks the Duke of Annandale. And this is a woman who everyone thinks is a witch because her father and all of her brothers mysteriously died and they think that she somehow did it. And she's very grumpy and I love her already. She's acting like she doesn't care about Miss Malis Mitchell-Moore, but then she offers her her cloak. There is a little fluttery feeling in their car ride home, so I'm excited to watch this evolve. I don't know. Just love it. The thing I'm most excited about this though isn't even in the synopsis, and it's the narrator of this story seems to be a character. And it's funny because the dedication and the prologue are from this narrator's point of view. I forget her name and I can't like flip back to check it out, which is something I'm really annoyed with in audiobooks for fantasies because I feel like the names are usually unusual and I want to look back. But she's some sort of creature. I think she says she's a hobgoblin and she can spy on other people because she can become like smoke. I'm I'm really confused about what's happening here. But in the prologue, she says that she has this story to tell us and she hoodwinked some mortal publishing house to sell her story so that she can pay for rent. I think I just really like the narrator. She does a good job of being very sassy and it's just so entertaining just from a storytelling perspective. This narrator has so much character and I can't wait to find out how she goes into play here. I am such a sucker for a story being told to me, so I think I'm really gonna enjoy this. We shall see. I think my favorite part about getting books and reading books is just starting them. I don't know why. I would rather start 100 books than finish like 3. It's a problem. Okay, I just finished the first chapter. Wow, things really ramped up like exactly when I went back in. This was 13 pages long and it's the story of Nina and Nestor, who are just the cutest. I feel like I said that like a soccer mom, I'm sorry. This is a historical fantasy and it takes place in the 1800s in Mexico, and there's talk of the Anglo settlers trying to take over. I think they're in Texas, but like it was a part of Mexico before. But on top of that, this is a story about vampires, so you know, it's really drawing the parallel of someone taking something that's not belonging to them, and I think that's really smartly done. However, I'm nervous about the war aspect because I don't love a book about war or battle or anything like that, just because it's like, okay, you're gonna fight, but now what? Which is probably rude of me, but you know, we each have our own dislikes and likes. I think the fact that there is gonna be a romance in here, like, they know how to get me. I will read anything for a romance, especially a childhood friends to lovers romance. Oof, I will do things for that story. So according to the flap of this book, Nina is attacked 9 years ago by a vampire and Nestor thinks she's dead and he runs for his life. And he's so aggrieved? He's so upset that he's just trying to find work somewhere else. And so 9 years eventually goes by, but then the United States invades Mexico in 1846 and war is about to start. The two of them meet up again because she's a healer and he's in the auxiliary cavalry, and they're gonna have the shock of their lives. She's probably gonna be very pissed at him for leaving her for dead, and he's probably gonna be at first amazed that she's alive, but then he's probably gonna feel shitty, like, damn. It then says the shock of their reunion is quickly overshadowed by the appearance of a nightmare made flesh. When this starts out, the two of them are only 13 years old. There seems to be a class difference between them. Nina seems to be a part of a higher class with her family, and she's thinking about how her mother and father are probably gonna marry her off to some other dude. She obviously doesn't want that because her and Nestor have been childhood best friends since they were 8 and they've been inseparable. And at first, no one gave a crap about it, but then as she started to become a woman, everyone's like, you probably shouldn't be spending time with that rancher boy. So Nina and him have this plan because they've heard this urban legend about how there's silver buried out on this land, and so one night they sneak out and they are gonna go try to dig for it, but they see this orb of light. I'm very confused as to what this is. All of a sudden, the two of them are out there in the dead of night and the light goes out and it's like the shadows are cast among them, and suddenly there's like a creature on top of Nina. And the last sentence of that chapter is, fear was sour in her sweat, in her breath, in the pale, wordless ringing in her ears, as teeth as sharp as knives sank into her neck. It's crazy though, because I imagine that her attack and him leaving her for dead happened when they were adults, or maybe like 17, but they're 13. Is this when he leaves and runs? I really wanted to go to chapter 2, which isn't something that I thought was going to happen at the end of this, so that's very exciting. I really am going to be trying to finish this week because this is a book club pick for the 4B's book club, the Big Bad Booty Bitches book club, and the live show is on October 1st, and I can't wait to watch and contribute in the comments if I can. I will put the information down below if you're interested. I'll start with Fireborn. I'm very interested in it, but also I've never even heard of this author, so like anything could happen. The first sentence of chapter 1 is, morning is our favorite time to fly. So we're getting right in with the dragons, I think. Okay, let me dive in. Okay, just finished. That one was 15 pages and there were a lot of characters and a lot of information that I would have underlined and highlighted if why we're going to start this whole book. So I'm gonna have to reread this when I go back to this, but it seems to be that there is a community of people, a country, whatever, and back in the day there were dragon lords who rode dragons, but then some guy named Atreus defeated the dragon lord, but didn't kill his son named Leon. That was in the prologue, and the first chapter is through Lee's point of view, who is that little boy Leon. Now I think he's like 17. He's on the back of a dragon. I think he mentioned that they have a telepathic connection like in Fourth Wing, so that's fun because that was like my favorite part. He's in the air, and it's sort of a How to Train Your Dragon moment where all these teenagers are training, and it seems to be that they're training for some sort of tournament, and the winners of this tournament, it's gonna be like a big deal. We do meet Annie, who's our other main character. It mentions that they were both orphans, and there isn't necessarily a romance happening, but just based on, you know, the fact that I've read 100 young adult romances, like there's gonna be a romance for sure. There is a sort of class system in this world though, and it's strange because they want peasants to rally, like they want them to be dragon riders and, you know, have this glory, but apparently not a certain peasant can be on top. Like Annie is technically a serf, and she's being discouraged from even going in this tournament because if she wins, they don't really want a serf to be the champion. It's so funny in stories like this where it's like, we want equality, except for these one particular people, they can stay at the bottom. Fuck them. I think the tournament is going to happen in the next chapter, so I am intrigued to continue, but also because there was so much information and so many names, I would want to reread before I even went into chapter 2. Again, I am a simp, and all I care about is this burgeoning romance between these teenagers. Although I am questioning why they said that the highest ranking is going to come out of this tournament. Is that including the adult dragon riders? Are there not, like, I'm very confused about that. Because imagine if you're like 30 years old, you've been doing this for a while, and suddenly some 16-year-old is like your boss. What? I do like the way it was written though. It's definitely better introduction than the Fourth Wing one. Like Fourth Wing, it immediately captured you because people were already dying in like the first chapter, but the cringiness of the info dump in chapter 1 of Fourth Wing was bad. It was bad. It was also fun though. Like it was fun to make fun of it. This one seems like it's gonna be written better, which is great because I gave Fourth Wing a 4-star just on entertainment. And so if I can be entertained and love the writing of a book, this has a lot of potential. Okay, next is Fall of Ruin and Wrath, another fantasy romance. I think this one is spicy, judging from what I've heard about Jennifer L. Armentrout. So let me get into it and I'll tell you what I think. All right, I just finished. Oh, wow. I feel like I'm most intrigued for this one so far. It's got a really good anticipatory way of I can't talk anymore, I'm sorry. Just the prologue made me so intrigued. So in the prologue, our main character, I think she's probably, I don't know, maybe 11 or 12, I can't really tell. She seems to be like a peasant. She's living in this house of this mean man who pinches her and maybe does more, I don't know, I don't want to know. And she's in bed with another young boy. I can't tell if they're siblings or like childhood best friends, and maybe he'll come back and like there'll be a romance, I don't know. She wakes up with this horrible feeling in her gut and she knows something bad is about to happen. They wake up and they're like, okay, be quiet. They can tell it's some sort of highborn. I guess that's like maybe a god or mythological, or, you know, more than just a human. Their room eventually gets searched and they each, like, it seems that these highborn are grabbing whoever's in the house and looking at them, and they're looking for something. They're looking for seraphs. I have no idea what that is. So this one highborn takes our main character and looks in her eyes, and something weird happens with his irises where they turn silver or like the sky, and she gets this overwhelming feeling. She says, I felt something, a warning, a reckoning, a promise of what was to come, and I knew. And she doesn't tell us what she knows, which is annoying, but also like good writing because now I want to know. Anyway, he says that no, she's not a seraph, we need to leave, but not before he kills the man whose house she lives in, because she communicates with the highborn, I mean, that man is responsible for the bruises on her arm, and he just kills him. And yes, I swooned, even though she's a child and this man's like 30, but in fantasy, there's a little bit of, you know, blurring of the lines because most people end up being immortal by the end of it, so who really gives a fuck? And the last sentence of the prologue is that she knew that she would see the highborn lord again. Then chapter 1, she is 22 years old now, and she lives under the protection of this baron named Claude. Claude? She has her own room. It seems to be very fancy, and based on the synopsis, synopsis of this, she's a courtesan. So she is like the property of this man, and I can't tell if he's good or bad yet. He might be a mixture of both, but we didn't meet him in chapter 1. We learned about this thing called the feasts, where orgies happen with high lords or highborn, and there's a lot going on, just like in the last book. But this one has so much intrigue because our main character is keeping secrets. She has this psychic ability, this intuition, and it's weird because there seem to be mythological things happening here, people with different abilities, and yet if people were to find out about her intuition, she would be like hunted. That makes no sense to me, so I wonder if that's something that she was told. It's one of those things where it's like, well, all the magic is allowed, but also you can't be psychic. That's a no-no. Like, what? But she recalls that highborn man who grabbed her and looked in her eyes and then killed that guy who was abusing her, and she referred to him as her highborn. So I'm already fangirling. And we have potential love interests because we have the possible childhood best friend who she's never gonna end up with. We already know that. Also, he might be her brother, I don't know. We have the highborn, who I think is probably end goals. We have this Claude person who might just be a love interest for now, and then it turns out he's evil because he's literally owning her. And then, based on the synopsis, she ends up meeting a prince who the baron who like owns her encourages her to take an interest in him. We have lots of love interests happening. We have an intrigue on the world and the mythological creatures and the class system. I want to figure it out. I'm very curious about her power. I think that's really cool to have that psychic ability. It seems to be brought on by touching someone. So wow, Miss Armentrout, great job on the intrigue. I never read From Blood and Ash. I do own it and I plan on reading it eventually, but wow, I think I'll just dive into this before I even start that. Okay, and last is Powerless, another fantasy romance. Let's check it out. Oh, this is dedicated for every girl who has ever felt powerless. I literally just got shivers. Okay, that was a pretty short first chapter. We get right into some action. Our main character, Payden, is like a cat burglar, which is very fun. I love heist stories or things like that, and she literally sneaks up a chimney, and we find out she steals fabric for this girl that she lives with. They seem to be homeless, and they seem to have lived together for a while. I can't tell how old they are, but I think this is YA, so she must be a teenager. They are talking about the class system. My God, with these class systems in these fantasy books, there are elites and then there are the ordinaries. And at one point there was a horrible plague and the king blamed the ordinaries because of course, and he sent them all out and they all just fucking died. And I'm guessing that our main character's parents died. I mean, where else would they be? She did say that she's keeping a secret that she can never tell anyone. No one can know, trust no one, and nothing but your instincts. So I am very curious what the secret is. Actually, I think it might be telling us on the back of the book, so one second. So the elites actually have powers that are gifted to them by the plague. I don't know how that works. The ordinary are banished from the kingdom, so maybe they didn't die. They talked about the purging and I just assumed it was like when people died. It seems to actually be like a trial, like the Hunger Games or something. Our main character, Payden, is posing as a psychic to blend in with the elites, but she's just an ordinary. I don't think that's her secret, which I'm glad. I'm glad they didn't like give it away on the back of the book. She accidentally saves one of Ilia's princes, Kai, who is the other point of view, and I'm guessing her love interest. So Payden, because of this, is thrown into the purging trials, a brutal competition showcasing the elite's powers. But LOL, she doesn't have powers because she's ordinary. That's funny. I feel like she's gonna end up having powers and that's her secret. It says, if the trials and the opponents within them don't kill her, the prince she's fighting feelings for will if he discovers that Payden is completely ordinary. You know what? The girl that she's with in the slums, she seems to have powers. She can like walk through walls or something. So I'm confused. I'm intrigued. I like how this is written. I feel like this is gonna be a real badass character and I'm ready for it. All right, that's it. The very expansive explanations of the first chapters of all of these books. I'm excited to eventually read all of these books. Although last year I did a try chapter for the September series and I still haven't finished any of those books, I don't think. That's embarrassing. All right, let me calculate how many pages I've read today. I'll be right back. Got my numbers, my stats. Let's hear them. I've read a total of 16 books this month. Today, I actually got to 29% of You again because I watched When Harry Met Sally. And I was like, okay, I need this story in book form. And I read 129 pages. I also read on in Mortal Follies. I got to 9%, so I read 37 pages. I read 13 pages of Vampires of El Norte, 15 pages of Fireborn. 18 pages of Fall of Ruin and Wrath, and 16 pages of Powerless. LOL. Also, how funny is it that I was like, she's gonna have a power. The book is called Powerless. What is wrong with me? So in total today, I read 215 pages, which is crazy because I could have just read a whole book. Probably none of these books, but you know, a book. And the total for September, I've now read 5,877 pages, if my math is correct. We've only got a couple more vlog days left, so I need to get cracking tomorrow. That being said, I have no idea what I'm gonna read, so I guess we'll both find out together. I'll see you then.